Eli slid off the plastic hospital chair and hit the floor so hard the sound cracked through the waiting room like a gunshot. Across from him, security guards were shoving people against the walls. For Victor Hale, the billionaire whose company Noah blamed for his wife's death. Noah dropped to his knees, scooped up his son's limp body, looked straight at the man he hated, and said through clenched teeth, "Take my seat." If stories about pain, justice, and the kind of love that refuses to die mean something to you, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me until the end, because this one doesn't let go. For 1 second, nobody moved. Not the nurse with the clipboard, not the guard barking orders, not even Victor Hale, who looked too expensive to belong anywhere near a crowded emergency room at midnight. His coat was wet from the storm outside. There was blood on one cuff. His jaw was tight, eyes cold, like he was used to rooms making space for him before he even opened his mouth. But Noah wasn't looking at the billionaire anymore. He was looking at Eli. Hey, buddy, stay with me." Noah patted his son's cheek with a trembling hand. "Come on, look at me. Breathe." Eli's lashes fluttered. His small chest jerked. He sucked in a ragged breath that sounded like paper tearing. Noah almost collapsed with relief. Then one of the guards muttered, "Sir, we really need that chair." Noah's head snapped up so fast the man actually stepped back. "My son just blacked out." Victor lifted a hand. The guard stopped talking. It should have felt satisfying. It didn't. Nothing had felt satisfying since the night his wife died on a rain-slick bridge inside a Hale Aurora sedan that was supposed to be the safest luxury car on the market. The brakes failed. The car folded like it was made of cheap tin. Rachel Mercer never made it to the hospital. And now Noah was in a hospital anyway, 2 years later, with the boy she left behind. Eli was 8. He had her eyes, her stubborn chin, and a heart that kept trying to quit on him. The doctors called it dilated cardiomyopathy. Noah called it one more cruel thing the world had handed a child who had already lost too much. A nurse finally rushed over with a gurney. "What happened?" "He got dizzy, then he dropped," Noah said, lifting Eli into the bed. "He's been weaker all day." The nurse scanned the chart clipped to the rail, and her face changed. "He's the transplant consult from Kingston." Noah nodded. She didn't waste another second. "Move, now!" As they wheeled Eli toward the double doors, Eli reached for Noah's sleeve with thin fingers. "Dad?"
"I'm here. Don't let them put me to sleep without you."
The words hit like a blade. Noah swallowed hard. "I won't." Then the doors swung shut between them. The waiting room went silent again. Only then did Victor Hale speak. "You should sit down." Noah let out a hollow laugh. "That's funny." Victor glanced at the chair Noah had offered him. He didn't take it. Up close, he looked older than the magazines ever showed him. Not softer, just worn in strange places. The kind of face built by control and expensive regret. "I didn't know your son was that sick," Victor said. Noah stared at him. "That sentence right there," he said quietly. "That's the whole problem with men like you." Victor's expression sharpened. "Excuse me?" "You don't know." Noah stepped closer. "You don't know who gets crushed under your decisions. You don't know what breaks after your headlines fade. You don't know what your last name sounds like in a house where someone never came home." Recognition flickered in Victor's eyes. Not full memory, just pattern recognition. Lawsuit, complaint. Another damaged family in a pile of damaged families. Noah saw it and hated it even more. "My wife was Rachel Mercer," he said. "Bridge accident. Hale Aurora, 2 years ago." Victor went still. The storm rattled the windows. And for the first time that night, the billionaire looked genuinely unprepared. "Mr. Mercer," he said slowly, "I remember the case." Noah smiled without warmth. "Of course you do. Your lawyers called it driver error." Victor didn't answer, because there wasn't one. A doctor burst through the doors and scanned the room. "Eli Mercer's father?" Noah turned instantly. "Me." The doctor came fast, face tense. "Your son is stable for the moment, but not for long. His numbers are worse than we expected. A donor heart just became available in Hartford, but the transport team grounded 2 choppers because of the storm." Noah felt the floor tilt. "A donor?" he whispered. The doctor nodded. "It's a viable match, but if we can't get your son to St. Gabriel's cardiac unit in time, we lose the window." Lose the window. The words didn't sound real. They sounded like something people said right before a life ended. "How much time?" Noah asked. "Maybe 90 minutes. Noah's mouth went dry. Hartford was too far by road in this weather. He already knew what the doctor was going to say before she looked past him. Victor Hale had arrived in a black convoy with 2 private security vehicles and a helicopter clearance request that had turned half the hospital upside down. The doctor hesitated, then said it. "Mr. Hale has air access.
If he authorizes immediate transport, we can move your son." Noah closed his eyes. Of course. Of course, the same family name that had buried his wife might be the only thing standing between his son and the operating table. He opened his eyes and found Victor watching him, unreadable. "This isn't complicated," Victor said. "Use the helicopter." Noah took a step back like the words themselves had struck him. The doctor's voice softened. "Mr. Mercer, don't." Noah's throat burned. "Don't say it like I have a choice." He hated how small that sounded. Victor reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. "You do have a choice. You can say no and keep your pride. Or you can let me save your son." Noah lunged forward so suddenly both guards moved. "You do not get to say that." His voice broke across the room. "You do not get to stand there with that name and talk to me about saving my son." Victor didn't flinch, but his voice changed. Lower, quieter. "Then let me say it another way. Hate me later. Keep hating me forever. Sue me, expose me, spit in my face if you need to. But right now, your son needs the helicopter." Noah looked at the doctor, at the rain-smudged window, at the closed doors behind which Eli was waiting, probably terrified, trying not to fall asleep because he promised his father he wouldn't go under alone. Then he looked back at the man he'd spent 2 years blaming in every prayer that came out sounding like a curse. "Do it," Noah said. Victor didn't waste a second. "Prep the flight." Everything after that moved too fast. Forms, signatures, nurses, a rolling bed, plastic bags of medication, a paramedic shouting into a radio, someone tying down oxygen tanks, someone else asking Noah if Eli had any loose teeth, allergies, last solid food. And through it all, Eli stayed awake just enough to search for Noah. When they wheeled him past, Noah grabbed his hand. "Are we going somewhere?" "Yeah, buddy." "Is it bad?" Noah bent over the rail, trying not to let the fear show. "It's a chance. A real one." Eli studied him the way children do when they already know the truth adults are trying to edit. "Are you scared?" Noah almost lied. Then he remembered Rachel hated lies, even gentle ones. "So scared, I can barely stand." Eli's tiny hand squeezed his. "I'm scared too," he whispered. That almost undid him. They got Eli into the helicopter with minutes to spare. The storm outside was ugly, wind knifing rain sideways across the roof. The blades started turning. A medic clipped Noah into a seat beside the stretcher. Victor climbed in last. Noah frowned. "Why are you coming?" Victor fastened his harness.
Because if the hospital loses clearance in mid-air, my name gets you back on track faster than yours. Noah wanted to tell him to get out. Then the helicopter lifted, and the city dropped away under them in a sheet of black rain and broken yellow lights. For 10 minutes, nobody spoke. Eli drifted in and out, oxygen hissing softly. Then, from the headset, the pilot cursed. "Wind shear. We may need to divert." The medic snapped his head up. "We can't." Noah's pulse slammed. "What does divert mean?" "It means not St. Gabriel's," the medic said. Noah looked at Victor. Victor was already shouting coordinates into his headset, rerouting through a private corridor no commercial team could have touched. He sounded less like a businessman and more like a man who had spent his life forcing impossible things to happen because he couldn't accept losing. For one insane second, Noah was grateful. And he hated that, too. They landed hard. St. Gabriel's roof crew met them at a run. Eli was inside the cardiac unit in under 3 minutes. And that's when the next nightmare walked in, wearing a custom suit and Noah's dead wife's blood on his family name. Simon Hale, Victor's younger brother. Bored darling, media favorite. Smile like polished glass. Simon took in the scene with one glance. Noah soaked in rainwater, Eli being prepped beyond the doors, Victor still breathing hard from the flight, and somehow managed to look inconvenienced. "Victor," he said, "you didn't answer your phone." Victor pulled off the headset. "My godson can wait. This cannot." Noah caught that word. Godson? Then he remembered the stories. Simon chaired the Hale Foundation Children's Medical Arm. He loved cameras, charity galas, and having his name printed under giant checks. Simon turned to Noah with practiced sympathy. "Mr. Mercer, I'm very sorry for what you're going through." Noah said nothing. Simon lowered his voice. "Which is why I've already asked our family office to resolve your financial burden. Full surgery costs, post-op care, medication, private rehab if needed." Noah blinked. The offer sounded too fast, too clean. "Is the catch?" Simon's smile barely moved. "No catch. Just one condition. For everyone's peace, we'd ask you to withdraw any further public statements tying Rachel's accident to Hale Automotive. These situations are painful enough without misinformation." There it was. Noah actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so obscene, his body didn't know what else to do. "My son is behind that door," he said, "and you're trying to buy his heartbeat." Simon's eyes hardened, just for a second. "I'm trying to protect all parties." Victor stepped between them. "Not now." Simon looked at his brother. "Actually, now is the only time. The board is already asking why a Mercer is on a Hale transport. If this becomes a media circus, the foundation freezes discretionary spending by morning." Noah stared at Victor. He saw it then. Not helplessness, not surprise,
recognition. This was not new language in their world. This was how problems got folded, packaged, buried. "How many times?" Noah asked Victor, voice low. "How many families have heard words like that while they were bleeding?" Victor's silence was answer enough. Noah shoved the clipboard back into Simon's chest. "Go to hell." Simon's smile returned, thinner now. "Principles are expensive, Mr. Mercer." "No," Noah said. "You are." Before Simon could fire back, the surgeon entered. "We have a problem." Every muscle in Noah's body went rigid. "The heart made it," the surgeon said. "But pharmacy will not release the anti-rejection protocol without financial authorization. This is a special case regimen. Someone flagged the account as pending." Noah turned so slowly it felt unreal. Simon adjusted his cuff. Victor's voice went cold. "Did you do this?" Simon didn't blink. "I protected the foundation from an open-ended liability." Noah moved before he even thought. He would later remember grabbing Simon's jacket, remember guards rushing in, remember Victor pulling them apart, remember Simon straightening his tie and saying the ugliest thing Noah had ever heard. "If you want your son in that operating room, sign." Then the press arrived. Noah didn't know who called them. Maybe Simon, maybe one of the foundation staff. Maybe the universe just hated timing. But within minutes, cameras were stacked in the lobby downstairs, and some smiling anchor on a hospital monitor was already saying, "Developing tonight, grieving father pressures billionaire family during child's medical emergency." Noah stood there, stunned. They had turned him into the villain before his son even reached surgery. Eli saw it too. Because when Noah finally got back into the pre-op room, his boy's eyes were wet. "Dad," Eli whispered, "did I do something bad?" The question hit harder than any punch. Noah knelt beside the bed. "No. No, baby. Never." "Then why are they mad at you?" Noah looked away. He couldn't answer that without explaining greed, power, and what rich men do when truth threatens their mirrors. So he touched Eli's hair and said the only thing he knew for sure. "Because some people get angry when they can't control the story." Eli swallowed. "Are you gonna sign?" Noah couldn't breathe. He thought about Rachel, about the mangled metal, about the settlement letter that called her death regrettable but unavoidable, about the months he spent holding himself together with duct tape and caffeine so Eli wouldn't hear him crying in the garage at night. And then he thought about losing his son because he chose truth over surgery. It was an impossible choice, exactly the kind men like Simon counted on. Eli reached under his blanket and pulled out a little red MP3 player with scratched corners. Rachel's old voice recorder. She used to leave bedtime messages on it whenever she worked late. Eli still listened to them when the chest pain got bad. "Mom said something once," Eli whispered, "when kids at school blamed me for falling in gym." Noah's vision blurred. What did she say? Eli pressed play. Her voice came through tinny and soft, but it filled the room like light under a closed door. "Hey, my brave boy. If you're hearing this, maybe you had a hard day, so listen carefully. People will try to make you feel small when they're afraid of the truth. Don't shrink for them, not even a little." Noah broke. He bowed his head against the rail and sobbed once, ugly and sharp, before clamping a hand over his mouth. When he lifted his face, Victor Hale was standing in the doorway. Noah hadn't heard him come in. For a moment, Victor didn't speak.
Then he said, "Rachel sent me an email the week before she died." The room went dead silent. Noah stood up slowly. "What?" Victor's face had gone pale in a way Noah hadn't seen before. "I didn't remember her name until tonight. I remembered the complaint, not the woman. But after Simon approached you, I pulled archived files." His jaw tightened. "Rachel Mercer sent a defect warning to my office 6 days before the crash." Noah's blood ran cold. "No." "She wasn't just a victim," Victor said. "She was trying to expose the brake failure." Noah stared at him, heart hammering. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Victor stepped into the room and held out a tablet with a scanned email on the screen. Rachel's name, Rachel's signature, Rachel's language. Calm, precise, impossible to mistake. She had written that Hale engineers were suppressing internal data after repeated brake anomalies in wet conditions. She begged for an emergency halt. She wrote that lives would be lost. At the bottom of the page was a forwarded response. Approved for internal review after launch. Initials, VH. Noah looked up like he'd been hit by a truck. "You saw it!" Victor didn't defend himself. "That week," he said, voice raw now. "We were days from a merger."
Simon told me the data was incomplete. He said halting production would destroy us. I let him move it off the crisis line. Noah took a step back. "You killed her." Victor shut his eyes. Noah's voice rose, shaking with grief, and something even worse than grief. Confirmation. "You killed her. And then you let your people call her careless. You let them tell the world she died because she couldn't drive in rain." Victor opened his eyes. There was no shield left in them now. "Yes," he said. "I did." Noah hit him. Not hard enough to drop him, just enough to make the confession land in flesh. Security moved. Victor stopped them with one look. He touched the blood at the corner of his mouth and said, "You should have done that sooner." Noah wanted to hit him again. Instead, he pointed to Eli. "Then fix it." Victor nodded once and walked out. Noah didn't trust it. He didn't trust the sudden remorse, the stripped-down honesty, or the idea that men who spent decades stepping over bodies suddenly found souls in hospital hallways. But 20 minutes later, the pharmacy release came through. The foundation funds were restored, then doubled. And Simon Hale exploded. Noah heard the shouting from the corridor before he saw them. Simon slammed Victor against the glass wall outside the ICU family room. "Are you insane?" Simon hissed. "Do you know what happens if this goes public?" Victor shoved him off. "It already should have." "You signed off too." Victor didn't deny it. Simon smiled then, vicious and relieved. "Exactly. So if I go down, you go down." Victor's answer was quiet. "I know." That was the moment Noah realized something had shifted. Not enough to erase anything, not enough to forgive, but enough to make the rest dangerous. Because guilty men stay predictable. Men who decide to tell the truth become problems. The surgery began at 4:12 a.m. Noah watched them wheel Eli away with a stuffed fox tucked under one arm and Rachel's old recorder in Noah's fist. When the doors closed, the world shrank to a clock. 5 minutes, 17, 39, an hour. The waiting room at St. Gabriel's was quieter than the first hospital.
Richer, too. Softer chairs, better coffee. Same fear. Victor sat across from Noah in the chair no one else wanted. He had taken off his coat. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. "Why now?" Noah finally asked. Victor stared at the floor. "Because when your son asked if he'd done something bad, I heard my daughter." Noah frowned. Victor swallowed. "She was 13 when she found out I buried a chemical report on one of our battery plants. Not lethal, just dangerous. Enough to make children sick in a nearby town. I told myself we needed time. She asked me if those kids had done something bad." He gave a broken laugh. "She moved in with her mother 6 months later. We haven't spoken in 3 years." Noah said nothing. Victor rubbed his hands together, as if cold had finally found him. "You offered me your seat while your child was collapsing. Do you understand how obscene that felt? I've spent half my life surrounded by people who give me things because they want something. You gave me a chair because I was in pain, and you still hated me. I didn't know what to do with that." Noah looked away. He didn't want to hear the billionaire's soul cracking open like this. It felt too intimate, too late. But part of him listened anyway. At 6:03 a.m., Simon made his final move. He called a press conference from Hale Automotive headquarters and announced Victor was taking a temporary leave for stress-related instability. He framed Noah as a hostile opportunist, manipulating a family emergency to revive a closed lawsuit. By 6:15, the clips were everywhere. By 6:19, Victor was no longer billionaire first. He was a liability. At 6:22, federal investigators got an anonymous data drop from Victor Hale's private server. Rachel's email, break reports, suppressed safety memos, Foundation coercion records. At 6:40, Simon called Victor 33 times. Victor never answered. At 7:11, the surgeon walked out. Noah stood so fast his knees nearly failed. The surgeon smiled. It worked. Noah didn't hear the rest right away. He heard words like stable and successful and critical next 24 hours. But mostly he heard Rachel's laugh in his memory, and Eli's thin voice saying, "Are you scared?" "Yes, buddy." Terrified. And then relief hit him so hard, he had to grab the wall. He cried without sound. Victor stood a few feet away and did nothing to interrupt it. For the first time in 2 years, Noah let himself imagine tomorrow. Not perfect, not healed, just possible. He saw Eli awake, Eli hungry, Eli annoying, Eli running badly at first, then better, Eli living long enough to outgrow his shoes and his anger, and maybe even some of his sadness. Noah wiped his face and turned to Victor. What came next surprised them both. He didn't say thank you. He said, "If you walk this back, I will burn your name to the ground." Victor nodded. "You should. No deals. None. No private apology while your lawyers clean the rest." "I fired my lawyers an hour ago." Noah searched his face for spin, found none. Just exhaustion, and a strange, brutal kind of surrender. 2 months later, Victor Hale testified live before a federal inquiry, shareholders, and every camera that had once loved him. He admitted he saw the warning. He admitted he chose stock over safety. He admitted Simon weaponized charity money against a child in surgery. Then he said Rachel Mercer's name in full, without legal padding, without distance, without the antiseptic language corporations use when they're trying not to sound like killers. By the end of the day, Simon was in handcuffs. By the end of the week, Hale Automotive stock had collapsed. By the end of the month, Victor resigned. People said he was brave. Noah never used that word. Brave was Rachel sending the email, knowing what it could cost. Brave was Eli smiling through pain so his father wouldn't fall apart. Brave was every family who kept pushing when money told them to be quiet. Victor wasn't brave. He was late. But late truth was still better than polished lies. Spring came slowly after that. Eli's recovery was messy and beautiful. He hated physical therapy, loved orange ice pops, cried the first time he ran 10 feet without stopping because he said it felt like somebody had replaced the stone in his chest with a bird. One Saturday afternoon, Noah took him to the dedication of the Rachel Mercer Pediatric Safety Wing. He almost didn't go. The invitation had Victor's name nowhere on it, which told Noah enough. When they arrived, there were no gold banners, no giant family crest, no Hale Foundation logos, just a modest plaque near the entrance. For Rachel Mercer, who told the truth before anyone was ready to hear it. Eli traced the letters with his fingers. "She'd like that," he said. Noah looked at his son, taller already, color back in his face, scar bright against his skin like a second chance written in red. "Yeah," Noah said. "She would." A voice behind them said, "I hoped you might come." Victor stood a few feet away in a plain, dark coat. No convoy, no guards, no performance. He looked smaller somehow, or maybe just human-sized for the first time. Eli studied him. "You're the helicopter man." Victor gave the faintest smile. "That's a better title than most of the others I've had." Noah crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Victor took out an envelope. "Nothing signed, nothing legal. Just a copy of the final transfer papers. The controlling shares from my personal trust were sold. The money funds this wing, 3 regional safety clinics, and a standing legal fund for families fighting corporate negligence." He paused. "It's in Rachel's name, not mine." Noah didn't take the envelope right away. "Why give it to me?" Victor looked at the plaque. "Because the first honest thing I did in years started the night you offered me a seat I didn't deserve." Noah let that sit between them. Then Eli tugged his sleeve. "Dad?" "What?" Eli looked from Noah to Victor and back again. "Mom used to say fixing something doesn't unbreak it. It just means you finally stopped making it worse." Noah stared at his son. Kids shouldn't be able to speak with that kind of clarity. They should be worrying about scraped knees and trading cards, not moral repair. But grief had made Eli older in strange places. Victor's eyes glassed over. He nodded once to Eli, unable to speak. Noah took the envelope, not as forgiveness, not as peace, just as proof that sometimes the truth dragged enough weight behind it to move a mountain after all. They stood there in the spring light, 3 people tied together by one dead woman, one surviving child, and one choice made in the ugliest hour of the night. A plastic chair in an emergency room, a sentence spoken through hatred. "Take my seat." Noah finally looked at Victor and said, "You know this doesn't make us even." Victor shook his head. "No, it doesn't. It never will. I know." Noah glanced down at Eli, who was already wandering toward the hospital garden with the reckless confidence of a child newly convinced he might actually get to have a future. Then Noah looked back at the fallen billionaire. For the first time, there was no lawyer between them, no camera, no boardroom, no spinning language. Just two men and the wreckage of what one of them had done. So Noah told him the truth. "You didn't save my son," he said. "You stopped trying to kill what was left of my family." Victor took that hit without defending himself. Maybe that was the beginning of whatever came after punishment. Not redemption. Maybe not even grace. Just the hard, unspectacular work of finally standing still while the truth says your name out loud. Noah turned and walked toward Eli. Behind him, the hospital doors opened and closed. Life kept moving. Nurses changed shifts. Babies cried. Phones rang. Someone somewhere got the best news of their life. Someone else got the worst. That was the cruel thing about the world. It never paused for justice. But sometimes, if enough pain gathered in one place, and one person refused to shrink, and another finally admitted what he'd done, the story bent. Just a little. Just enough for a child to run again. And sometimes, that's how a broken world confesses. By giving one family back the heartbeat it almost stole.